Hi, beautiful ones. My intention with the Shamangelic Healing podcast is to be a platform that explores real-life issues and provides you with valuable insights and practical tools to support you on your journey of healing core wounds and reclaiming your power and manifesting a thriving, impactful life that you absolutely love. You see, it's my dream to inspire millions to shine. So if you find these topics valuable, please take a moment and share the podcast and leave us a rave review. This helps the podcast grow and reach the people that would greatly benefit from these insights. Thank you so much for tuning in and investing in your personal development. I'm right here walking this journey with you. So let's dive into this episode. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Shamangelic Healing podcast. So excited to dive into rewriting your story today. And I have so many questions for our guest. And just a quick reminder, go to the show notes to get a free gift on healing the inner child, and also check out upcoming events that we have here in Sedona to nourish your soul. If you're wanting an intimate experience with a few like-minded individuals, we've got a couple retreats coming up, the Soul Awakening Retreat and also the Goddess Awakening Retreat. So check those out if you're needing some nourishment for your soul. An intimate tribe of like-minded, beautiful individuals here held in the sacred embrace of Sedona's vortexes. So if you're needing some of that healing, awakening, expansion, support, and community, then check those out. And today, I've been so looking forward to this conversation with our guest today, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg, who is a PhD, and his specialty is really in human behavior and the link between our brain and our actions. And his website and also his Instagram, you've got to go check it out. It's called Long Distance Love Bombs. And when I first came across you, Jeremy, and I saw the title, I was just like, yes, that's it. Long Distance Love Bombs. And so go check him out on Instagram as well. My favorite of your Instagram recordings is the one on how to be a man, what it means to be a man. It's January 20th, and it's this timeless transmission of your incredible ability to use words as poetry and medicine. So I highly recommend everybody go check that out. And Jeremy, I'm so excited I've got so many questions. I've got so many questions for you and so many stories to rewrite with you from clients and personal different scenarios where we want to figure out how can we not be trapped by the story of our past. So welcome, Jeremy. And I would love for you to share with everybody your mission statement, because it's totally beautiful. So
Thank you. You're so lovely. I feel like your voice and your vibe. I was just sitting here kind of like, this is great. This is just like a very soothing TEDx talk. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. So yeah, my name's Jeremy. My mission statement is to make kindness cool and compassion commonplace. I'm just trying to make the world a little bit better than yesterday. And I write and I rant and I podcast and I speak and I teach, and just trying to like pour some heart out into the world.
I believe that this combination between PhD and also self-help and personal empowerment, as a life coach and a van owner and someone who also wears a man bun, this certainly does qualify you, and you're going to hook our listeners, I'm sure, are already in love with you. And I think this combination of things really is very helpful in the personal development world. And so just adore your vibe as
Thanks.
Well. And
yeah, I like to
authentic,
I like to joke that I have the whole like personal development starter kit. Like,
exactly.
I've got like a nose ring.
Perfect.
I've got my ears pierced.
Long
I have long hair. Like I have a bit of a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah.
Like I'm a vegetarian. I own a van.
Check. That equals authority.
Yeah, just nailing it. Just the cliche California life coach guy.
Yes, yes. And thank you for it. But, I
Mm.
mean, who does this? Who does this long distance love bombs? Where did you come up with that anyway? Like, what's that all about?
Yeah. So the original phrase "long distance love bombs" was years ago. I was talking to an ex girlfriend on like G Chat or like Instant Messenger, whatever that was, and at the very end of the conversation, she was like, "Yeah, it was good to catch up. I love you. Hope you're doing great." And then I wrote back, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Like, careful of the long distance love bombs." And then like saw it written out on the screen and was like, I really like that phrase. It's kind of weird and kind of cool. And then at the time, I had written like a book that I was trying to get out into the world, and I needed a title, and so I just decided that would be the title. So that was the origin of that. And then fast forward another like 3 or 4 years, and I was standing in an airport, and I was waiting for my flight to board, and I looked over and I saw this woman, and she was on the phone, sitting down, and she was just sobbing. She was crying a lot. You could tell it was like one of those conversations that there was like real sorrow and pain. And I was kind of just zoning out like I do, and I noticed her, and I was kind of staring at her a little bit, and then she hung up the phone, and then she kept like sobbing, with like big shoulders, and then I noticed that she was surrounded by a crowd of people waiting for their flight to be called to board the plane, and and she just looked sad and alone, and I was noticing how nobody else was noticing her, and I felt terrible, and I wanted to do something to help, and so I was kind of anxious and weird. I didn't know what to do. And so I got a card out of my wallet, and I wrote on the back of it, "It'll be okay. And you will be too." And then I walked over to her and I like handed her the card, and we made eye contact, and I gave her like a little pat on the back, and I could tell she was just stunned. Right. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Is this guy? The story in my head so I walked away, and I didn't look back because I was terrified. And then I got my flight boarded, and I flew away, and I started really daydreaming about, what a different kind of world would look like. And just, it's such bullshit that a woman could sit there and sit amongst people scrolling on telephone screens and reading magazines, and nobody could help her. And I just started fantasizing about what would be different, and what it would be like if kindness was cool and compassion was common. Right. And like, if people came up and offered her a hug, or said, "Do you want to talk?" or ask if she's okay. Right. And so I had that vision contrasting with the vision in my brain that was like, you're a lunatic. Like, that woman probably thinks that you were giving her your phone number, that you're like the weird guy that loves emotional women in public spaces. What are you doing? And so, yeah, so that started kind of that trajectory of trying to do some random cool shit in the world. And when I got home, I started leaving notes all over the place. I left them in public spaces and restaurants and just everywhere I went. And then I started writing online, and then I started a blog, and my little sister convinced me to start Instagram. And yeah, it's just been kind of that snowball effect ever since.
I feel that a lot of what is happening collectively can be addressed and solved and healed through this level of compassion and empathy and kindness.
Mm,
I believe that these are our superpowers right now, especially as there's a lot of people that are weeping in this way, with some
mm,
trauma, with some hurt, with a breakup, with a work challenge, a financial challenge, a disease, a diagnosis in their physical body. And I believe these are the answers that you're talking about, is just a deep level of compassion and empathy and kindness, that these are our superpowers. And if we withhold them, we withhold progress, we withhold connectivity, we withhold evolution. And I just want to applaud the courage that it takes to do that, and also the impact, because it's a stranger, that it has
mm.
even that much more value. To be able to convey empathy to a complete stranger is a beautiful gift. It's a beautiful gift. And
Yeah.
I invite
Thank
us to
you.
just create a challenge here among those people watching or listening, to to, within this day, within this next week, what is an act of kindness, a random act of kindness that you can pay forward to somebody that is experiencing, a wound or a challenge of some kind, whether it's through social media or in person, whatever, a stranger, a family member, a colleague. Just, can we stretch over that wall of that's inappropriate, as long as we're really coming with that kindness, empathy, and compassion. So challenge on, peeps.
Yeah. And like one way that I talk about this in my TED Talk, but one way that I was framing it was that recognizing that I've been that person before.
Oh, for sure.
And that it might not have been in an airport, but it may have been in a parking lot or at the gym or at university. It might have been in a conversation or with some eye contact. Like I've been that person that has got some bad news or had some realizations and was just feeling shattered.
Yeah.
And I know what it's like to feel isolated. I know what it's like to feel lonely and despondent and like giving up. Like I get it. It's in my soul bones. Like I know that vibe, and it sucks. And so I think recognizing ourself in the other is a really powerful way to acknowledge that. And like you can do this in a fun way too. Like if somebody cuts me off on the freeway, my knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, what an asshole, right? Like what's this person doing, right? Yeah, but like if I pause and take a moment, I'll like create a fun story of like, oh, maybe his cat's sick and he has to go to the vet, or like maybe that dude has diarrhea, or maybe his his mom is like on her deathbed at the hospital and he's rushing to see her, right? So those things, those, like seeing the world through that compassionate lens like makes my life better, because then I don't stress, I don't get angry at a random stranger for doing nothing.
It makes it easier to bridge the knee-jerk human reaction of screw you to, oh,
yeah,
it bridges that when you create I love that idea of just creating a fantastical story that may be, true. And whether true or not, it creates this bridge over to compassion. Okay, so ambassadors, let's be ambassadors of long distance love bombs, and that's the invitation for everybody. And I love that. So if more of us can do that, I think this planet will be, and humanity will be, farther along. I want to dive into, because we talked about this, about doing, having a chat about rewriting your story, and with your ability, and your mastery in this area of connecting, our thoughts and our brain with our action, and how much of our story is built by the imprints of our life experiences. And so I've got a couple scenarios here that are kind of common that many people have some issue with, that we would love your help here in rewriting this story. And how do you move from the shackles of that being a victim of your story and being a villain of your new novel of life, and how to rewrite that. So one of the ones that I want to start with, and I've got so many juicy ones, I was like, oh, I can't wait to pick your brain about this.
I'm feeling kind of anxious. I'm like, oh, a surprise test, like a pop quiz.
You thought, your PhD, you thought with a PhD as a professor that all of your, pop quizzes were over. No,
I thought I was done with testing. Okay.
Isn't it like ridiculous how we're so tested every single day?
It is, yes.
Life is like pop quiz, final, just kidding. Okay, so one of the stories is about neglect during childhood, whether that is parents not being emotionally available, or a parent was one or more parents not present, whether that was due to a death or whatever reason, a divorce, where there was an abandonment issue or neglect in the form of I was put up for adoption, or I was the middle child of 11 kids, whatever it is, whatever. And so with everybody watching and listening, they can insert whatever their version of neglect or not being loved or seen during childhood, how do we, or unloved, how do we rewrite that story as it can manifest in, you know, overcompensating to try to get attention from people, or playing small and being unworthy, and not able to attract people that, would love us. So we can kind
Mm,
of have two different, many different scenarios of what may come from that story.
yeah, it's such a good question. I wish I knew like a very succinct answer to that. Um, what comes up for me is two things, and I'll flag them in case I forget the second thing. So one is that we are born fully equipped. Like we are born with everything that we need. Like we've had billions of years of evolution. Like we got it. Like the idea that you would arrive on this planet missing something or being in lack of something that you require to live a fulfilling life is just bogus. So that's the first one. And the second one was, oh shit. I hope I can cuss. I just did. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. This is
um,
also a long distance love bomb,
yeah.
just,
So
wow, we just saw
maybe I'll
facial
just,
expression.
yeah. Let me riff on that
Absolutely.
one, and then I can hopefully the other one will come up. But the way that I explain it in workshops is that I used to work at a preschool. My mom was a preschool teacher, and when I was in high school, I would go and help out occasionally. And in the summertime, I would teach little kids how to swim and finger paint and all that shit. And I realized that toddlers don't give a shit about what other toddlers or what other adults think. Like, if they're unhappy, they're going to use their voice. They're going to let you know. If they want something, they're going to demand it. If they create something, they are not going to judge that creation to the person sitting next to them. Like, no toddler is like, oh, Jenny's finger paint mush is so much more abstract and profound than my finger paint mush. Like, we used to take these kids swimming. Not a single toddler would ever say to me, like, I don't want to wear my bathing suit because my thighs are so big, right? Or like, oh, my swimsuit is so old, or there's a hole in it, or it's out of fashion, right? So we were all that way. We were all at some stage using our voice, yelling, demanding what we need, speaking our truth, sharing our hearts, just showing up in a really real and authentic way, right? And the important thing to realize from this is that we are taught to be judgmental. We are taught to shame ourselves and others. We are taught to compare. We are taught to fit in. This is like a sociocultural, familial thing that we learn, right? And so if we can learn it, we can unlearn it. And that is such a powerful fucking idea that I would love to drill into everybody's head that's listening right now. It's like you can unlearn things that you were taught as a child. And when you speak of neglect and trauma and all of that stuff, which is very real and very significant, another important point to recognize is that nobody escapes childhood unscathed. Like, we're all fucked up by our parents somehow. Or if not our parents, by society or the bully at
Caregivers,
school
coaches.
or government policies, whatever. Like, it's a battle to escape childhood, and we all have some kind of wounds or scarring to show for it. That is just a normal part of the lived experience, in my opinion. And if we can recognize that nobody had a perfect childhood, and even if you recognize that maybe there's somebody out there that did have a perfect childhood, then that is their trauma, because the world is not perfect. So they are not prepared
Hmm.
for the nonsense that they're going to experience day to day in the world, right? So we all have stuff. Like, I'm friends with a lot of coaches and therapists, and they all have stuff too. I promise you. I promise you that I have a PhD and I got a lot of stuff to work through. I teach this stuff and I'm working through it. Anahata, I'm sure you've got some stuff as well that you are
No. Not
Yeah. Oh,
none.
you're just pure radiant light.
People like, oh, you must have had a lovely child. Look, I was not raised in an ashram. Let's just be really
Yeah.
clear. And yeah, I got stuff that I am still and will constantly be learning from. And
Mm-hmm.
as a child, I think we have our experiences, and then we start the comparisonitis thing. Oh, your family's different. You have a
Yeah.
mom. Oh, and I don't. Or, oh, you weren't adopted and I was. Or, there's
Mm,
the comparisonitis thing of, oh, your dad was emotionally available and mine wasn't. Or, um, you were the only child and I was one of 10. Or, then we start this story of like, then the story of what it was supposed to be. What it
mm,
was supposed to be is that both parents were supposed to love me and see me, and both parents were supposed to be present. Both parents were supposed to be sober. Both parents were supposed to be able to love and acknowledge me. And I just don't feel that that is, well, of course, the reality, but that doesn't provide the gap with us to fill in the gap, to fill in the blanks with what's true. And
mm,
it feels like, as universal beings, like you said, we come in with, whole. We come in like connected, and then the gaps become our classroom. The gaps become our training ground for being a human, being a compassionate human, understanding pain, and using that classroom as the lessons for later in life. When I work with clients, let's just say around adoption or something like of this nature, where it's, one would say, oh, that's ultimate neglect. Nobody wants you. Nobody wants you. um, and yet I find every single time, Jeremy, that the birth parents were not who that soul was meant to be raised with anyway. Of like, yeah, probably not a 15-year-old, maybe not an 18-year-old that was headed to jail. Yeah,
mm.
probably not that to raise you. And how wise it is to rewrite that story to say how wonderful and intelligent it was for you to unchoose your birth parents,
Mhm.
to be raised by to be raised by your adoptive parents, as an example. Didn't mean they have all the answers. Doesn't mean it was a walk in the park or a piece of cake, but it was, they didn't have the answers either, the other parents. And like learning that as a soul we're powerful creators, and so we might have unchosen to have a certain father or mother in our life, and maybe a grandmother was a better fit
Mhm.
and would have caused less harm or been more nourishing. And so what are other ways that, if there is neglect or trauma, that we can rewrite that story in a more empowering way that begins to dissolve the grips of the victim on our psyche and our thoughts?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And one thing that just came up for me then as you were speaking was this idea that like we try to like win the trauma competition of like, no, you don't know what it means to be hurt. I was hurt so badly. Or the other side of that is shaming ourselves because we didn't have significant trauma, quote unquote, in comparison to in the story compared to other people. Like, oh, my trauma was just that like I didn't get my favorite pair of shoes on Christmas. I got like an orange pair and I wanted a blue pair. And like maybe that for you that was really significant. Like maybe that messed you up. Maybe that was a thing. That's okay. Just because you didn't grow up in like a war zone, fleeing bombs, doesn't mean that you don't have some significant wounds that are still available to heal, right? So that's one idea. A second idea is, and this might just be a masculine analytical scientist nerd part of my brain, but I often go back to this very simple idea that it happened and you can't change that. Like it's done. Yeah, maybe it was terrible and it sucked and you would never do that. Knowing what you know now, you would not make those decisions and you would not wish that on anybody else. And it's unfair. and it pained you significantly, and perhaps it still does. I agree with all of that. And it happened. Like, we don't have Harry Potter time machines to fly back and change that. But I do love this idea from one of my favorite writers, Tom Robbins, who said, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And I think that, as a very simplistic yet aspirational notion, can be really powerful. And if we recognize that those things happen to us in the past are not necessarily dictating who we are now and what will happen to us moving forward, that we can like forge a different path. We can heal. We can become somebody different. We can shift our identity. We can let go of things. We could unlearn things. We can take new processes and principles and beliefs and rituals and habits and like become a different character. Like, I read this thing the other day, and it was talking about doing something that's out of character for you, right? And I loved this phrase, and I need to write something up about it. But doing something out of character just means that you're acting in a way that a different character would act. And if we accept that our life is a story or a plot or a movie, you could be a different character. Like, we've all done it. I used to be a toddler, and then I used to be a student, and I used to be more of a son, and then I became a boyfriend, and then I became a PhD student, and then I became a government employee and a writer and a podcaster and an author and all of this stuff. And you did that too. And it's going to continue. Like, we're perpetually evolving. And I think that is also a really powerful thing. It's like, you're not done yet. It's not going to be this way forever.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, I love that. I'm hearing a couple things. Is one is just completely stop the comparisonitis, habit of my trauma is worse than your trauma or not good enough. It just, own and embrace your experiences. Don't belittle them. Don't feed them, but just, part one is acknowledge whatever trauma, disappointment, pain, or wounding that you experienced. And it isn't about anybody else. It's personal to your soul. And it isn't about a ranking system. And yeah, right. And also, number two is, yes, it happened. Yes. Let's not ignore it. Let's not put it under the carpet. Let's not wear it as a badge of honor, as if it's what happened is the future and it defined me. It might have impacted you, but it doesn't have to define who you are. It might have shaped absolutely your journey, but what you do with it is what really creates your path going forward. So yes, be with it. And I think in the be with it and claiming it is to actually dive into the healing of it. Well, what did happen and what did occur and what did I need so that I can go into the process of reparenting myself at this point? If there wasn't a validation, attention, safety, okay, how do I go forward and create that in my life so that inner child has boundaries, that inner child has the freedom to be silly and goofy without judgment. And this part of me that wants love can attract it, manifest it, become it, give it to myself in ways in which wasn't available then. And it's like, okay, well, acknowledging what it was and wherever the gap was, and that becomes, I feel, the opportunity to then take action and move into filling those gaps ourselves. Because I feel like there's this misconception that our parents were supposed to bring us all of the tools and model everything perfectly. And I kind of see it, Jeremy, like three different puzzle pieces that, yes, our parents, or let's just say caregivers, because that can, caregivers can look like a lot of different configurations in a family. And so our caregivers, yes, they probably did give us some of the puzzle pieces correct. Maybe that was hard work. Maybe that was spirituality. Maybe that was, eating well or fitness, whatever it was, that maybe they gave us some of the puzzle pieces correct. Then I feel if we're participating in evolution, only totally optional, if we're participating in evolution, that our parents or caregivers gave us some of those puzzle pieces upside down, twisted, or backwards, like alcoholism, or physical abuse, or lack mentality, or neglect, or emotional, just oppression. And that it's our responsibility only if we're participating in evolution to upgrade those, to, instead of sedating emotions, let me, with alcohol, or oppressing them, let me actually feel them. And that may be the way of healing the bloodline from, it's my responsibility. If I stay trapped in the story, then I keep those puzzle pieces that are backwards, upside down, and don't fit. I keep them there. But if I'm growing and evolving, and I'm rewriting the story for my bloodline, and also for me as the character in my own story, then those have to be flipped. We have to try a different way. We're going to try different configurations to see, okay, this is how I deal with emotions, which might be totally upgraded from what our parents gave us. And then our children will upgrade it again and do better. And I feel like that's one of the ways in which rewriting is like, okay, well, if there was a gap, then how would you do it differently? How do you want it done? Around those areas that you felt like there was neglect or not love. Well, how would you do it differently? So how does that land, and what does that look like with action steps?
Yeah, I love that. The way that I've been taught by my coach, and the way that I teach it is to recognize that like you're like a Tesla. Like you're like a solar powered robot computer car. And you
you see me.
Yeah, I see you. You're like a hot pink Tesla. Glitter. And like you were raised by a 1962 Ford Mustang that was like spewing smoke all over the planet. And that Ford Mustang was raised by a 1920 Model T that was like the first car ever that was like barely a car, right? And so, or you could do this like you're an iPhone and your parents are like a rotary phone. So like we're just perpetually evolving and expanding. And then as an iPhone, I'm looking back at my parents being like, why don't you know how to use these apps? Why don't you just swipe onto AirDrop and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi? And my rotary phone parents are like, I don't have apps. I don't know what is an AirDrop, right? And that's cool. That's okay, because your kids are going to be whatever the fuck virtual reality AI monsters they're going to be, and they're going to shame you for being an iPhone, right? And so like we're all doing the best that we can, right? And as you suggested, you can take the lessons from the pain. You can find the silver linings. And one example for me personally was my mom. My mom was an alcoholic, and she's now sober 8 years. But that was hard. And I learned a lot about boundaries and helplessness because my mom's alcoholism nearly killed her. I learned how to walk by falling down a lot. I learned about trust from being cheated on by my ex-girlfriend. That taught me a lot about communication and truth, right? And so we don't necessarily love this fact of living, but
The painful parts.
the painful parts actually are the gifts in many ways. Like if you've never tasted defeat, like you won't appreciate victory nearly as much. And so that's just part of when you talk about what action steps can you take to move forward from all this stuff. I think doing an inventory of what those painful things have taught you is a powerful way of like write down a list of all the stuff that that really destroyed you or shattered you or broke you. Like, guess what? You're still here. So I know that it's taught you resilience. Like, you're still breathing. You're still listening to a podcast like this, implying that like you are doing growth. You are doing the work. You are turning to face your shadows. You are leaning into the discomfort that maybe you're not perfect. Maybe there are new ideas to consider. Maybe you can be a little bit better. So all of those things that have happened in your past and in my past have got me to this place now. And I could rant on this for a while, but like I'm looking outside and there's flowers and I'm like, oh my God, flowers. Holy shit, the world is a miracle. Like, I'm alive. There's a muscle in my body pumping liquid through microscopic tunnels underneath my skin near these calcium bones that make a skeleton. Like, I can make noises with my tongue and look at the screen and you can understand them. And we're recording this so that later people can pull a device out of their pocket and hear this conversation. Like, we're wizards practicing magic. Like, life is fucking crazy.
It's
And
so
if
awesome.
we put people on the moon, like, if we can do that stuff, then surely there is a way to heal what once harmed you. Surely there's a way to find the glory in the gore of your past. Like, it's doable.
Yes, I love the glory in your gore, and this whole concept that there are lessons and also gifts. I think in the biggest imprints, the biggest traumas, the treasures lie there. The treasures lie there. So if we're busy sedating or ignoring or seeking validation for the victim part of it, we're missing this whole, treasure part of it by ignoring it, oppressing it, or seeking attention for that victim to be fed, rather than like go in, lean in, go into the gore, go into the guts. And in my Shamangelic healing practice, I'm like, let's go into the depths. What is there? What shadowy, fear lurks there? What pain lurks there? Because all it wants is to be attended to. And perhaps, in the generation of our parents, in the rotary phone, the dial-up phone, there wasn't tools, support, there wasn't language, there wasn't resources. So believe what you're also sharing is that as we evolve as a species, we also have tools to go back, now that perhaps the generation before us, and definitely not the generations before them, had to actually do our personal development work. What they had was vodka, and work. And, we still have those things today. And yet, which are totally optional. And you and I have chosen both of those, I'm sure. Extensively, chosen the sedate and let me just distract with. We have so many socially acceptable, approved, options for sedating and oppressing the pain. And the liberation and the freedom and the joy comes from being able to actually lean into it and say, gosh, what was this really about? When you shared, thank you for sharing about your mom and situation, that with your experience with your alcoholism, it brought the gift to you of clear boundaries. And with my dad's kind of physical rage and the pain that I experienced in my heart, there's no way I could access compassion if I hadn't experienced deep wounding. And it wasn't my sweet mom who was kind and thoughtful that I learned compassion from. It was from the greatest villain in my life, in my story, that he was my greatest villain. And when I really got to do the personal development work and dive into it and lean into it, and after my tantrums and after my anger, and after like holding the inner child that got physically hurt and emotionally hurt, that there was underneath that this whole other level of a gift of, if I can forgive this experience, I will understand compassion. And how can I really, I can't get a PhD in forgiveness until I have experienced deep pain and gone through the cycles and the evolution of forgiveness to be able to get to compassion. I'm not going to be able to access that very valuable thing, which is what we started this conversation with, about empathy and kindness and compassion. I'm not going to be able to access those frequencies. I can access them with people that I love and that it's easy with, but the real mastery is, can you access them with those experiences and with those villains in your story that you kind of want just dead, that you want to write out of your story, and it would just be easier if they would just go away, and can I just erase them, and can I just block their energy from my life? And it's like, no, the energy imprint is in there. Like, they may even be gone from they may be even dead and gone, but the lesson and the imprint is still there, waiting for a discovery of the treasure and the gift and the pearl that lies when you lean in and feel it and heal it and come to this place of compassion. And there's no way with that I could understand the beauty and the depth and the frequency of compassion without the interaction with my dad and I being from a core wound that needed healing. And I was really good, Jeremy, at playing the no tantrum. You don't get access. You don't get forgiveness. I'm still mad at you. And it very much feels like a 5-year-old. This is, I'm not talking to you. And I played that posture well into my 30s. And all it did was contribute to drinking and sedating and a lot of painful experiences that I neglected healing, which contributed to all kinds of conflict in my life. And it wasn't until I was really ready to lean in, and I didn't have the tools earlier and I wasn't ready to. And when I was able to lean into it, oh my gosh, the treasures, that is by far my greatest relationship as a teacher. He's my greatest mentor, not because he taught me or modeled what to do, but the dynamic between us gave me the opportunity to heal things inside me and grow and learn and develop compassion instead of waiting for him to um, say he was sorry, or waiting for the rotary phone to have skills that were definitely beyond, applications that were beyond his functional ability, like beyond. Oh, waiting until my last breath for him to upgrade. No, he wasn't going to upgrade. But the question was, what am I? Was I going to upgrade? And I think that your point around there's treasures there is really a powerful way to rewrite the story.
Yeah, I think you've brought up a really powerful idea that when I first learned this, like, really did my head in. And that is to recognize that all of the things that you desire to change about yourself, they're benefiting you in some way, right? And so when you talked about throwing a tantrum into your 30s, right? That was probably some aspect of you that was like, I don't love that I do this. I should grow up. This is immature. I'm so angry all the time. My relationships are unhealthy. But there's also part of the complexity of living is that throwing a tantrum perhaps got you attention, and it got you connection with your partner. And so in that way, it got you love and it got you safety because you had the power in that dynamic, right? And so I think it's really important to consider the benefits that we derive from the things that we want to change, such as procrastination, avoidance, biting our tongues, right? There's a lot of subtle benefits that arise. And when I started diving into that, it really shifted a few things for me of like, oh my gosh, I do that because I get that.
Right.
Oh, shit.
Right. And sometimes it buys us time. Sometimes, like with your mom or with myself or, with my dad or whoever, like maybe being in that sedation cycle with alcohol or a tantrum or playing the victim or denial or oppressing emotions, maybe it buys us time because I'm not ready to deal with it yet. The tools
Totally.
aren't available yet. I'm still too wounded to deal with it. And so I'm not really emotionally, energetically ready to evolve yet. And so those are, I feel like they're crutches, Jeremy, that, buy us some time, but then
Mhm.
then they have the expiration date where it's like,
Yeah.
sedating isn't working anymore. I got to fix this. I got to the point where it was so painful to be in a room with my father that I'm like, I can't deal this. I can't do this anymore. And I
Mm.
can't get away from him. And
Yeah.
so I need to fix this. I need to heal this. And it was like, it's on me to make a change here and not expect him to make a change. It's on me. And I finally was having the tools and the language and the support and the personal development material to actually start that process, and the maturity that wasn't available in my 20s. So I
Totally.
think these crutches buy us time, but they're short term survival mechanisms that are not meant to be long term strategies.
Mm.
Because if we sedate our pain and we numb our feelings, then we're not going to be able to access sustained joy and love and bliss and happiness. Those will also be elusive. So we may numb, but it numbs the pain, but it also numbs the pleasures in life.
Mhm.
And that can get painful enough where it's like, okay, I'm ready to look at what I can change here now.
Yeah. Yeah, and Gabor Mate, who you must be familiar with his work, I
Not
imagine.
yet. Not yet.
Gabor Mate? Oh my gosh. So if you're listening, look up Gabor Mate. He's a brilliant psychotherapist, and he worked with like the homeless population in Vancouver. There's a part of Vancouver that's really, it's really a lot of homeless people, a lot
Mhm.
of hardcore drug addicts, a lot of crime, and he
Yeah.
works with them. And his take on the drugs was one of appreciation
Mhm.
of the vast majority of these individuals have had significant sexual family trauma in
Right.
childhood. There's mental illness. And he said, thank God for the drugs because that's the only thing that's keeping them alive.
Right.
Right. They're in such intense pain. There's so much buried trauma that the drugs are the only thing that they know, the only thing that they have to continue showing up,
Right.
right? And in that way, it is a crutch. Yeah. And we do those things until we have had enough. Um, I've learned the hard way time and time again that I generally need to hit rock bottom before I will change. That's just me, perhaps. And even that is a story that I need to get rid of because that's not me. That's just the way I have done it in the past and I don't have to do it in the future. Right. But we do things a certain way until we're ready to really go into that cave and face that shit and do the work, right?
And doesn't that also work for other people too? Is like other people will use those coping mechanisms
Yeah.
until they're ready to do the work. And I like to put a caveat at the end of that, in this lifetime or another, because I
Mm.
may have the expectation that my dad or your mother or a boyfriend or a colleague or a sibling needs to do that on my terms for them. Not that I've ever imposed will on somebody else's journey, ever. But other people have. But this is a whole nother level of compassion. Is instead of trying to shake somebody awake and rip away their or shame or guilt or judge or you know be mean and aggressive or forceful about, you need to let go of that alcohol or you need to let go of that you know process that is also quite abusive, that doesn't honor, they're in a classroom of their own timeline and their own creation, and they may need to weave with this story,
Hmm.
this feeling, this habit, this lifestyle, this codependent dynamic, this hurtful life experience or lifestyle choice, until it's alchemized to the point where there is a catalyst that they are ready to make a change, which they may or may not do in this lifetime. And so this was a whole nother level of me learning how to stand back from imposing will on other people's journey, trying to shake them awake, um, and try to rewrite their story for them. Not that I've ever tried to do that again, um,
No.
or try to force them away from a crutch that is keeping them alive. Bacon, bourbon, blue cheese, all of those things were keeping my dad, like they were band-aiding him together from his childhood traumas. I'm trying to take all that stuff away from him, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
it's keeping him alive. He wouldn't be able to cope without those things. It may shorten his lifespan, which is his right to do.
Mhm.
And there was a deep level of compassion to also, and humility, to kind of get my claws out and judgment out of other people's lives, that the way they're doing it is wrong, um, and that it needs to change right away. It may or may not change, and that's their journey. That doesn't mean I have to, because I don't like the choices they're making, withdraw compassion from them.
Yeah.
But I could withdraw my judgment, which helped tremendously with my relationship with my father. After forgiveness, it was also like a whole nother journey of allowing.
Mhm.
And how has that happened in your relationship with your mom? Like, how has that unfolded with your mom's journey and your story with her?
Yeah. Phew. All of that for sure. Um, my mom, I actually had my mom on my podcast to talk about on her birthday a couple years ago. I think it
Wow.
was last year, to talk about her experience with alcoholism and sobriety and therapy and healing. And it was really, she started crying during the sound check. She was so
Oh,
emotional. She was like,
super
so,
sweet.
yeah, it was super sweet. One thing that I had to learn that took a lot of time was, and I touched on it previously, this idea of helplessness. The other side of that is acceptance.
Yes.
And I was feeling helpless because I so desperately wanted to change reality. And nobody's ever want to fight with reality. I really wanted my mom to get better. I really wanted a different relationship. I really wanted to talk to her uh, periodically. There was months that I didn't speak to her or any communication. I really wanted her not to die. I really wanted the possibility of her being at my wedding in the future, meeting my kids, all of that. And I felt scared that none of that was going to happen. And I was also really frustrated and upset that I was powerless
Yeah.
to influence the situation. I was helpless to affect my will onto her life,
Mhm.
right? And at some point, I had to make peace with the idea that my mom might die. I had to make peace with the idea that she is a grown woman doing the best she can, and she's making her own choices, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
And I had to face that fear. So like that Joseph Campbell quote of the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we
Yes.
seek, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so in that situation, I had to allow myself to imagine her funeral. I had to allow myself to really go to this place of like, what would life be like without my mom? What would it mean to tell my friends and family and the internet that my mom drank herself to death, that she chose white wine over me in some way? These
Mhm.
are like the stories that were going on, right? And I got to this place where I realized that acceptance and boundaries are really powerful things.
Yes.
So I can speak my truth and I can communicate all of my fears. I can express that I care about you and I love you and I worry about you and I want to help you to get help. I think there's a better way. I'm scared you're going to die. I can communicate all of that and have nothing happen in response, right? And so this is when the boundaries comes in of this relationship dynamic is not well. Like this situation is not expanding me. It's not filling me up. And so I need to step away from this situation, right? It hurts me to be involved in this for so long, right? And this is really hard. And we've all faced this in some way. Maybe you have a overbearing boss, or you've split up with somebody that you realize was not good for you, or you've made a hard decision. And I have friends who literally haven't talked to their parents in years because that's the healthy dynamic. It's the healthy thing that they need. So I'm kind of rambling, but to reiterate that, I think it's important to prioritize yourself. I think it's important to love yourself so much that you're okay disappointing other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to remember that kindness and compassion is self-work as well.
Right.
That forgiveness of others is a good thing, but so is forgiveness of self. And I think that in my experience, it's very easy for me to neglect myself at the expense of people that I love,
Right.
or opportunities, or responsibilities, or chasing the shiny things that society has told me I should chase.
I thank you so much just for sharing a very intimate story. And I'm hearing within that experience and journey for you, um, a story that you rewrote, that I'm responsible for my mother, and feeling that I'm holding her burdens, or I'm responsible for fixing her, or I have to control, I have to get her to stop this thing so that this future reality that I've already invested in of her being around for my future is realized. So I'm hearing in this process that you also liberated yourself from a story of, I have to be the fixer, she has to stop doing this, and that I'm
Mhm.
responsible for her, and allowing yourself to individuate, not close your heart. And I think I want to be really clear with what you're
Mhm.
sharing, is that it's not in the individuation and the clear boundaries. It's not a wall that you are unworthy of love, mom, or
Mhm.
ex-partner or parent or whoever, insert person that you're having a challenge with. It's not that they're unworthy of love. It's just individuating from the story of that, I am responsible for your burdens, I have to fix
Yeah.
them, and you have to stop that. And that this individuation is another rewriting of the story that allows them to be writing and living their own story, even if we don't like what they're writing. And it's also pulling ourselves out of being a writer for somebody else's story. That is not our empowered place. That is not our soul place. And usually, only personally, I can say that when I've nominated myself without consent, to co-write, or actually um, overwrite their story and write it for them, that never went as well as it did in my mind. And without consent, usually the other person doesn't feel that it's joyful either, because I'm writing as the
Mhm.
tyrant. You have to stop this, you have to do this now, don't do that, using guilt, shame, manipulation, or judgment to try to get that them, who is that, they're the star of their own story, but I'm writing it differently, and they're not reading their lines, motherfucker. You're not reading your lines the way
Mhm.
I wrote them for you. And realizing that, wow, I need to rewrite this story, that I am responsible for them, and that to rewrite the story, that you're not worthy of my love unless you fill in the blank, sober up, apologize, change, evolve, mature,
Mhm.
take accountability. And it's like, no, I can love you whether you do those things or not. And so it's also rewriting my own personal story about, I'm okay, I am enough, I am more than enough, I am safe, I matter, whether they acknowledge that or not. And so a certain level of individuation that doesn't require them involved in writing my story, or what that they are the writer just because they were involved in my past doesn't mean I'm not the writer of my future. And I love that you shared this story about your mom so that we can actually, see how it rewrites. Now, in your situation, your mom has been evolving and growing and going through her choice, her evolution, and she is, you know, making changes in her life. And so for some listening and watching, that is not the case, but that doesn't mean that you have to withdraw love, and it doesn't mean that you can't still grow beyond that. And one of the stories that I wanted to rewrite with you as well is this story of, well, just because my parent was an alcoholic, or I was raised with like lack issues financially, or we had this socioeconomic, blue collar, or this is how much money, this
Mm.
feeling of what's possible. And there are so many triumph stories. If we look at Michael Jordan, where his coaches were saying, "You will never ever be a pro athlete," and Tony Robbins, if he was meant to, stay small just because he was raised in poverty and stay in lack consciousness, somewhere along both of those men rewrote their story. So did Oprah Winfrey. Oh, you just don't have the face for TV. And if that was if all three of those stayed in their smallness about the story of what somebody else was writing their story for them, you'll never have money, you'll never be successful on TV or a professional here. And there's an example there of three individuals that have clearly shaped our Western culture for sure, in very different ways about what's possible. And they rewrote a story that somebody else was writing for them. They took the pen back and said, no, I can be abundant. I can be a professional basketball player. I can be an amazing TV personality. So, what is that process of taking the pen away from somebody else in rewriting our story, even if a trauma or a limitation was written for us, in our past, or in our childhood or our young adulthood?
Yeah, I think the first step is recognizing that it's all a story. And I kind of teased myself a few minutes ago of like, oh, like I learned the hard way. That's just who I am. And then I was like, hang on, no, that's a story. And so recognizing, yeah, that it is all a story. And secondly, recognizing that you can change it. Like you can rewrite it. That's possible. As I mentioned previously, a third step might be recognizing how that story currently benefits you. How does it keep you safe? What do you gain from it? What are you avoiding, right? Maybe stepping back and realizing that where do other people have an influence on you that is unhealthy, right? And so I guess what I'm getting at is the first step, I think, is to recognize where you are.
Yeah.
Take an inventory, take an audit. Like, how is when I work with clients, we start with two things. The first is, what do you want? It's a very simple question, super fucking powerful. Oftentimes people have no idea how to answer it. Like, what do you want? When it comes to your health, what do you want? When it comes to relationships, love, body, money, like, what do you want? So getting clear on that. And then second part is, where are you now? It's an audit. What are your rituals? How much do you weigh? What's your bank account? How's your love life? How's your confidence? Right? What do you do? How do you spend your time? What do you spend your money on? What are your values? Right? And then the next step, which is actually the work, is like, how do we get you from where you are to where you want to be?
Yes.
And with your work and therapists and personal development and listening to podcasts, you can start to do things differently. Like literally taking action.
It absolutely takes action. I love that
Yeah.
you started with what is holding you in a last pattern. It might be like, well, all my buddies and I go drinking, and that's what I do every Friday night, and so
Mhm.
that pattern might be affecting my Saturday morning or my conversation. So it might be, what about that pattern? Is it comfortable? Is it what I've always done? Is
Mhm.
it a fear of, well, successful people are mean? Is it a belief that I can't be successful because successful people are heartless, or I can't be abundant because then I'm going to be, those people, they're a judgment about prosperity, and looking at where those beliefs are in the current story are actually keeping you small, or just the fear of change. I might need to leave this circle of friends, or I might need to leave alcohol or this job or this relationship that is not supporting who I'm becoming, and really look at how you've given your power away for those those experiences to continue to write the story, which is really the same chapter repeating over and over again. The same
Yeah,
chapter. If I
correct.
meet the same friends, if I do the same thing, then it's the same chapter. And my GPS, I'm not actually moving towards my dreams. I love that you
Mhm.
said, hey, you need a dream. We need to, what is the GPS? What's the destination?
Yeah.
How does the story end? And what does it look like along the way? And identify the gap between where we are here and what needs to change in order to get to that summit or that kind of life. And navigate what are the steps to change that habit, or give permission, or face a fear, or look at a habit that is holding you back, whether it's inner dialogue, an oppressive inner dialogue, or whether it is a lazy habit that is keeping you from time investing in moving towards your dreams. Like, audit. This is what I do with my
Yeah.
clients. First thing, audit. First
Mhm.
thing, audit.
Mhm.
Where are you at, and where do you want to go? Same. And what do you think
It's
are
so
some of those?
powerful.
It is so powerful, because otherwise, we're just in an unconscious circle with the same chapter over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And depression, addiction, sedation, usually relationship drama, are correlations that I am in a pattern that is not a growth pattern. I'm in a stagnation pattern where I've
Yeah.
outgrown those things fit me at whatever, 16, 24, but they don't fit who I'm becoming. No
Yeah.
wonder anxiety and addiction and depression, and alcoholism, and those sedation, it's a natural correlation to I'm not growing. I'm not
Mhm.
growing. And we have a need to grow in life. So, what do you think in that process are some fantastic things that help with the process of rewriting? Once you've worked with a
Yeah.
client and said, okay, this is where you want to be with your health, your love life, your finances, your career, and here's where you are. Like, what are
Yeah.
some of your favorite things that you really think are deal breakers, and like help people change the most and provide the most? Like,
It's a great question. And I'm laughing to myself because I I hate when podcast guests do the thing that I'm about to do. But I'm going to be that guy.
yay!
Which is to say and I had no intention of doing this, but like I literally created an online program called Get Shit Done 101.
There it is.
And it's all about behavior change. It's all about how to start rituals, how to face your fears. Um, and I break it all down. And so, like, that's the simplest thing. Like, if you're really interested in that, it's called Get Shit Done 101. You can check it out. But as a quick synopsis of that, there's a psychological theory that I use in that program. It's called the theory of planned behavior, and there's three main ways that we decide whether or not to do something. There's three like obstacles to overcome. The first is our attitudes. The second is social norms, which is other people, like the opinion of important other people. Like, what would Anahata think of this? What would my girlfriend think of this? Right. And then the third one is self-efficacy, which is your own self-perceived abilities, knowledge, and skills. And then underlying all of that stuff is beliefs, your beliefs about the world, beliefs about yourself. So that's the story component. If you think of it like the base of a pyramid. The base is your beliefs. Above that, it would be your attitude, social norms, self-efficacy. And then above that, intentions, and then behavior. So it starts with an audit of like, what are your attitudes when you think about doing X? You know, is it fun? Is it hard? Is it scary? Is it liberating? Is it exciting? You know, when you think about yourself, do you believe that you are capable? If you want to run a marathon, do you own running shoes? Do you know how to run? Do you know how to train? Is there a marathon nearby? What would your friends and family think about you running a marathon? So there are definite ways that are scientifically proven over decades of research to like get you doing the shit that you want to do. And another important caveat with that is to just start small. And I talk about this a lot in the program, but start as small as humanly possible and then scale up. And you can do this with physical activities, but you can also do this with feeling, with vulnerability, with honesty and self-expression, with your relationships. It's like, you want to get better at being confident, like practice being confident. Like, it's not rocket science. Lean into that. If you want to be better at vulnerably expressing yourself on Instagram, do it. Like, you have to actually do the thing. It's like, I wish there was an easier way. I so wish that during my PhD that I had discovered the like spell that you have to say 3 times while spinning in a circle and your life changes. But in my experience, discomfort is a prerequisite for growth. And, you know, that's hard to accept for me. But yeah, if you want to change your life, you're going to have to get uncomfortable. You're going to have to do stuff you've never done. You're going to have to think things you've never thought. You're going to have to shift your beliefs into something that feels impossible and dumb and weird. And then you're going to have to try some new shit. And you're probably not going to be great at it because you've never done it before.
And the perfectionism, you know, the perfectionists, you know, on this call will be like, the reason why I don't do it is because I'm not good at it, or afraid to fail,
Yeah.
or I get judged when I fail. And so even that story of perfectionism, that I always have to do it perfectly, can be one of those things that keeps us actually from being new at, you know, being a novice at something and starting over, and embracing it rather than expecting perfection, or, you know, the fear of failure keeps us from exploring. And that's how we learn. We all learned how to walk by falling a lot more than the steps that we're moving forward.
Yeah.
I love that you're like, start small. Same thing with my clients, is just look, what's one thing you can do today, even
Yeah.
if it's just let's order the running shoes, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Walk around the block.
like, just order the shoes first. That's the
Yeah.
first thing. Now put them on. Okay,
Yeah.
we've got the shoes on. Okay, now go take a walk and come back. Go take a, and it just starts to rewire this downward spiral that's been entrenched in the brain's neural patterns of, this is what I always do after work. I pour a glass of wine, and then I turn on the TV, and then I do this. And so it's going to be breaking those patterns, whether it's I do this every morning, I wake up, start the scrolling on the phone, and then check email or whatever it is. And it will be new and uncomfortable, awkward initially. But when we start breaking those patterns, an upward spiral happens, and it becomes the new normal to take a walk. It becomes the new normal to wake in the morning and meditate, have green juice, do some
Yeah.
breathing exercises, take a walk, whatever it is, becomes the new way of being. And so we're actually building the human that can reach the summit of our dreams
Yeah.
by the daily habits, the daily thoughts. And yes, we're going to be creating implementing new structures, which I think also requires new tools, because the older version of us didn't have those beliefs that the new version of us that can reach that summit has. They don't typically have the habits or the lifestyle or the community to support a bigger dream. A lot of times are, like you said, you know, other people, what will they think? A lot of times it's just our circle of influence that will keep us, you know, from manifesting a bigger dream, because hey, in our neighborhood or in our vibration, we just status quo. And if anyone tries to move or grow, they're going to get a dagger in the back real fast. So it's
Mhm.
also surrounding yourself with people that want you to grow, want you to dream, and are not going to shame you for failing in the process of growing, and want you to evolve and grow. And so that might be expanding your circle of influence. And also, you're going to be learning some things, which means new tools, masterminds, programs like yours, programs like mine, picking up a book, listening to a podcast, and starting to actually learn tools that are required to reach the summit, which, if you've been used to walking the same path, you know, probably don't have the tools. When I was, backpacking, it's like, look, if I'm going to go backpacking, I
Mhm.
need different equipment than when I'm just going for a 10-minute hike. I
Yep.
need different equipment. And my body needs to be trained in a different way if I'm going to be hiking 20 miles, in nature. My body needs to be trained for a marathon. I can't just wake up and run a marathon. And so
Mhm.
these little steps in our program is called the Quantum Leap program. We'll put the link to your program, Get Shit Done 101. We'll be sure that that program link is in the show notes. Also,
Cool.
for the Quantum Leap program as well, of just like little steps create quantum leaps over time. And
Mhm.
people try to just leap to the summit, and it's actually just great habits over time get you there,
Yeah. The
right?
end.
Yeah.
um,
That's
like,
Get Shit Done 101. You actually have to
yeah. And I
get it
think though, just to continue that analogy, the tools that you might need to go backpacking. So you like need a backpack, you need a passport, you need like some little those
done.
tiny
Water.
bottles of
Uh-huh.
like soap and shit. Like you need that internally as well. So you need to cultivate that mindset, that resilience, that confidence, etc. And that's just a perpetual evolution. Like, and if you're listening to this right now, like you're doing it, you're doing good. Like we're good. Like she and I, like we're good. Like we're kind hearts. We know a lot of shit. We're trying to raise an impact in the world. Like you're doing well. Like this is part of the process. Um, and then you have to just keep expanding right to your edge. Like, oh, this feels uncomfortable. It's super exciting. Like, oh, here we go. And just keep scaling. Like the example that I use in my program is like for meditation, right? Like meditation for me, game changer. Whew. I wish I would have started when I was born. That would have been great. But I say to people like start with a minute. Like do 1 minute today, and then tomorrow add another minute, and then add another minute. And it seems like nothing, but at the end of a year, if you literally kept that up, which would be wild, it's 6 hours of meditation a day. Like you'd be a monk. Like, but it starts with a single minute in the same way it starts with a single step to have the big journey or whatever to run the marathon. It's like just gotta do it. Do some shit. Go
And
do
I
it.
believe, like in the mind, I love spending. This is where quantum visualization comes in, and the beliefs, like you were talking about earlier, is the foundation of the pyramid. What we believe, and a lot of times the beliefs in our mind are faulty. They're old. They're like the rotary phone.
Exactly.
They're like outdated. They don't belong to us. So they were installed by somebody that owns a rotary phone. And most of them are false and corrupt with all kinds of viruses.
Yeah.
So a lot of times the programs need to be updated from I'm unworthy, or I'll never be a basketball player, I'll never be a writer, or I'll never find love, or all of these old programs also need to be upgraded. And I think that's one of the things that I do in my meditation just this morning as well. Like every morning, like that is ritualized. See myself at the summits of my life, whether that's relate
Mhm.
in relationship dreams, whether that is abundance dreams, whether that is lifestyle happiness, health, is just see it, feel it, smell it, taste it, because I'm rewriting the programs right there. This is possible because the old programs don't believe that's the case. They only know what they know, and they only know what has historically happened, and they also only know what another person that doesn't really know me or my soul or my path or my potential put a limitation and a ceiling there. And
Mhm.
I bought it. And so this is where I feel part of that 1 minute every day is also spending time seeing, feeling, smelling, tasting, and living in your mind first your new reality, your dream life, so that we can rewire the foundation on which what we think is possible, that we can rewrite and upgrade the belief systems that are the foundation. Because if I don't believe I can get to the summit, or I can find love, or do a marathon, or be financially abundant, then if I don't believe it, I can't manifest it. I might get lucky and fleeting, and then it'll be gone. It won't be sustainable,
Mhm.
or I'll sabotage it. So the like you said, internalized. It needs to be internalized, and when we can rewire in the brain, then we can believe it's possible. It might not be what we are experiencing right this minute yet, but if I can see that summit and I can feel what it's like at the top and enjoy the journey along the way, even if there's a setback and I took a wrong turn, it's like it's still my summit. I'm going there. I'm
Mhm.
going there. Like nothing's going
Yeah.
to stop me. That level of passion and commitment helps get us through those challenging times where a judgment from somebody creeps in, or a setback happens and we're not sure we can get back up again. That's where the tribe and those daily quantum, what I call quantum visualizations, help to remind us that it can happen. It's possible. It's like rewriting the mindset software
Mhm.
uh, for the journey. Um, any other tips that you have about living an epic life for for people that are listening, that have a story that they are in they are in the middle of rewriting right now,
Mhm.
claiming the pen back from people, and 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 claiming the pen from writing other people's story and just focusing on our own story. Any other tips or suggestions you have for
Mm,
writing and experiencing an epic life?
yeah, I mean, I would say that professionals are amateurs that didn't quit. I would say that, um, hmm, I had another one that just came up. Professionals are amateurs that didn't quit. Oh, and that somebody else has faced what you are facing and has gotten through it,
Yes.
has overcome it, has healed it, has moved on from it. It's possible. Like, it is possible to change. It is doable what you are trying to do. Like, it is totally believable that your dreams can come true. Like, it's happening every day to people all around the world. Like, why not you?
It's happening to you, and it's happening to me,
Yeah.
and everybody listening or watching. It's happening. If you're still on this podcast, you're
Yeah.
listening or watching, then it's happening for you too.
Hmm.
Just listening is a recommitment to, yeah, I'm taking the pen back and I'm writing a new story. And
Yeah.
that's exciting for me. I just get all giddy. I'm totally the cheerleader for the soul. um, I'm out with it, Jeremy.
I like that.
I
Me
got
too.
totally out of the closet with that, and
Yeah. And
it
that,
lights me up because it's a, just like your mission of like kindness, cool, and empathy. I got it now. Kindness, cool, empathy, popular, and compassion. Commonplace is that and mine is to inspire millions to shine. I get
mm,
lit up with the idea of people not only writing their story but manifesting it, because when that happens, we change humanity. We're not hurtful to others when we're living our dream life and we're being impactful and we're embodied, providing our magical gifts out into the universe. Everybody wins. And
yes.
so I get lit up about that possibility of,
Mm,
of people rewriting their story and um, walking their soul mission and reaching the epic summits in their life the way they've already agreed to. So
Me too.
Let's do it. Let's do
Let's do
it.
it. Yeah.
And I'm excited as I, watch your long distance love bombs expand and reach people, deeply at a core level. Whether it's your writing, whether it's your coaching, whether it is an Instagram, beautiful, soulful, poetic, you know, transmission, which you got to go watch his IG. I just really super love that. Whatever it is that I just see this rippling out for you, and that the love bombs go viral. And
I would love that.
it's written. It is now written.
It is done.
It is done.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, brother. I have tremendous respect, humility. Your humility and your passion, your humor, and your authenticity are just make personal development and growth just palatable and accessible. So, thank you for being you, my brother.
Right back at you. Thanks for being you. Thanks for letting your weirdness out and just showing up in the biggest, best way possible. That's what we're here to do, right?
Exactly.
It's like, fuck it. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, exactly. This whole transformation thing doesn't have to be hard, because we can, and it could just be like, oh shit, I tripped over that thing. Look at me. I teach that thing and I just tripped over it. And it's like, okay, I'm still in the classroom, and just be like, so tell everybody where they can find you. And because I know everyone's just going to eat you up in all of your offerings.
Thank you. You can find me online at longdistancelovebombs.com. I'm on Instagram at longdistancelovebombs. I have a podcast called the Long Distance Love Bombs Podcast, which you'll probably recognize a bunch of people on that guest list if you follow this lovely lady. And we're gonna do an episode next week together.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the easiest way. And then I've got a book that I wrote. I do.
Why do you say that with your face like that?
I was just trying to remember. Of like, oh yeah, I wrote a book. I forget. And like in the former life, I did in-person events like retreats and workshops when we were allowed to go and see humans. So we'll do that again as well. But yeah, I write and I rant and I use profanity. And this episode, if you're literally still listening to this, then you've got a pretty good taste of who I am. And I think you'll really dig my writing. So yeah, thank you for hosting. Thank you for inviting me into your space. I adore you. I'm honored. I'm grateful. I'm glad we're like BFFs now.
Yes. Absolutely.
I need to come visit you in Sedona one day.
Yes, please. Yes. It'll be like in-person love bombs.
Yeah,
absolutely. In the sacred vortexes here in Sedona. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your vulnerability, your humor, your love bombs, your F bombs, your authenticity, all of it. It's deep medicine. You're my people. And this is the thing, is just surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals that are just real and passionate and humble and courageous with taking little steps and quantum leaps in life. So you are definitely that.
Thank you.
And just a reminder to everybody to go look at the show notes, because we'll get that link for your course. And also you'll have the link to a quantum, I think the guided visualization we'll do is maybe quantum manifestation, and we'll have a free gift definitely in the show notes, and also all of your links, as well as upcoming events here in Sedona. There are small gatherings happening here because people are still needing that nourishment. And here in Arizona, at least at this time during the recording, we're able to have small gatherings. And sometimes people just need that connection and tribe that is not virtual. So if you are in the area and or called to Sedona, then check those out, the Soul Awakening Retreat and also the Goddess Retreat. So thank you so much, brother. And I'm looking forward to being on your show for more magic, more silliness, mayhem, and miracles. So thank you, brother. Thanks everybody for listening. And also please share it, like it. If this was valuable, go leave a rave review. It's really helpful for more people to hear conversations that are real and authentic and inspiring like this. And definitely share it with somebody else. And we also have the challenge of long distance love bombs every day. Go leave a long distance love bomb to somebody, a little note, an anonymous thing, pay somebody's bill, write them a letter, leave a post-it, send a message. I think that this is how we can make love go viral. Definitely. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Love you, brother.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Long distance love bombs to everybody.